As I was preparing the talk today, I was really focused on the word best. When we think about, in SAP's mission statement, we have a mission to help every customer become a best-run business. This whole seminar or forum is about best practices. So what do we mean by best? I mean, what really is best? There we go. When we think about best, isn't this what we seek at home? Isn't this what we seek at work? If you have children, isn't that what you want your children to be the best that they can be? How often have you told children, if you have children, to say, hey, just do your best? So we use this word a lot because I think it's part of our culture, it's part of our desires. But what does being your best really mean for a consumer products company, especially in the digital economy? And that's what I kind of want to explore. And then I'm going to circle this back to specifically how SAP technologies will help you do it. So we have to first of all stop and say, what does best look like? If I saw something was best, what kind of outcomes? We're known by the fruit of what we do. What are the outcomes that you would expect a best run, digitally enabled business to look like in consumer products? How do you become best run? And I know that's on the minds of most of the people in this audience. You hear a lot. And wasn't Brian great this morning as he talked about some of the futuristic things? And I know in the back, if you're like me, in the back of your mind, you're saying, I know it's coming at some point. There's a train coming at me in the other end of the tunnel. I don't know how long it's going to take. And I feel a little bit anxious about where I am today and where I need to go. So we're going to focus a little bit about how you become best run. And my thesis to you is that I think it's culture and technology as well as strategy. Those are the three things, and I'm going to suggest a culture change that we may want to adopt to really help us become best run. And lastly, what do you need at your core? If you strip away everything in your everything in your company, what is it about your company at its core? What capabilities? What do you do in the marketplace that is fundamentally unique, that if you apply digital technology to it, can really allow it to blossom? We also heard this morning about its opportunities or threats. What capabilities do you need at your core to thrive in a digital economy? And I want to share an analogy, and it's not a perfect one. But if you think about, all of us have, and science has proven, that left brain and right brain thinking. In terms of your left brain is the side that does a lot of the logical processing. And we could, being a German company, could joke that's the German side. Very logical, orderly, rational. And then the right side is the creative, is the side that there's a lot of development, a lot of open to new ideas. So when we think about it in the digital space, we all as business leaders have a mission to drive greater efficiency. How often do you hear in your company you need to be better, faster, cheaper? How often do you hear in your company discussions around, well, I understand the digital stuff, but we have to get our manufacturing costs down. What about our transportation? And we can get very focused around efficiency. And efficiency is very, very important, no doubt. The right side really represents growth. What are the possibilities? What could we be doing? How could we become more agile? And how can we leverage some of the digital technology to become much more enabled, to change our business model? So you can see there's a little bit of tension between the left and the right. The missions are a little bit different. And so many companies in the consumer products industry have been forced into this either or. I'm either efficient or I'm very focused on growth. And we all know the reality is we need to do both. But the digital reality is we need to do both differently. And not just incrementally differently, fundamentally differently. And I think that's where the culture is. We need to develop this culture of and. It's no longer either or, and our investment levels need to also reflect this as well. And I'll share with you a couple of thoughts from other companies that I've talked to about their investment strategies around digital. And I think that in many companies, this is an issue, that we're either left or right. And really what we need to do is develop this culture of and, because both are possible, and I'm going to share some examples of companies that are doing this very well. So when we think about our industry, there's been some dominant threads over the past 15 to 20 years in terms of this single focus. How often have you heard it in your company about, whether it's a focus factory strategy, or our focus is to be the best cost manufacturer. That's our focus. That's our differentiator. That's another phrase that when you hear the differentiator word, that's saying that's our focus. So there's been three predominant models in the marketplace. There's the best cost, and probably the best example today is what's happening with 3G. They saw an opportunity in their acquisition of Anheuser-Busch, and to combine it with the InBev acquisition to really drive a better cost through scale. Very focused on physical assets, very focused around scale, productivity, best cost. Nestle put this whole term of global into our vernacular that some of us wish we could get out of our vernacular. I've used it in sentences at home and people look at me a lot. But their whole mission about let's get global best practices, but we need to execute locally extremely well. So it's this mixture and a healthy tension, and I think that Nestle's done a very nice job in this whole local approach. And then we have other companies that have really taken the globalization of brands. In terms of P&G, I think is especially their rigorous passion for process. They've developed a process, and they've been rigorous and dedicated to building big global brands. So if we consume it, and no one company in this room is perfectly in one box, you may have one foot in one in another, but these have been the predominant models that if you look at any of the leaders in our industry, that you can say the primary orientation is either a best cost manufacturer, like a 3G capital, or that their globalization is their primary goal. But my premise to you that being single-focused opens you up. Being single-focused in the wrong way may present risk. You could be the best cost manufacturer. You could be very focused on physical assets. You could do a great job at manufacturing and distribution, and you can get totally disrupted in the digital economy. So this is where that and thinking, the left and right, need to work together. So let me share a couple examples with you. There's the example of customers that have the what got me here won't get you there. I wish they would read the book, right? Because they're saying, for 20 years, I've been the low-cost manufacturer. For 20 years, I invest in global brands. That is my differentiator, my core competency, and that's the horse I'm going to ride. That's fine, but you're taking a risk because generally speaking, as you talk about getting into the digital space, we see companies like this creating a separate e-commerce organization. Do any of you have that? That I do my regular business over here, and the e-commerce guys, they're going to fool around over there. Oh, and by the way, they're going to have a separate set of technology. And this bifurcation of technology causes a lot of problems, and also it limits your ability to really extend the benefits of what you've invested in the enterprise. The second single focus strategy, and this is where I'm intentionally being a little bit provocative here, but if we step back and you look in this industry, we are so dependent upon fixed institutions like syndicated data. Let me just pick our friends at Nielsen, IRI, and so forth, as well as POS data, as well as these. We even talk about value chains. We talk about rigidity. And when you think about those institutions, I was speaking with a real large consumer products company out of India, and he had a very insightful thing. He said, we're innovating business processes faster than you guys can do in the US because you guys are so locked into those institutions. And he's exactly right. They provided a lot of value, there's no doubt. But when you look at the time it takes from a point-of-sale signal of syndicated data until it gets into your data warehouse and you make action or make some decisions on it, it's ancient in the digital world. 50% of all consumer purchases are digitally influenced. So why is it that relevant in terms of market share where we're surveying less than 2% of the ACV, and all of a sudden we're forecasting the total market? I'm not saying that they don't have value. What I'm saying is our dependence upon these structures present risk. And so as we get into the digital economy, you want to continue to optimize what you have, but you can't depend on it to the degree that you may have in the past. And if there's any AC Nielsen guys or Nielsen guys, they're probably going to throw something at me tonight. I'm using syndicated data, but frankly, you could apply it to transportation. You can apply it to other areas. The other is, and Brian also pointed this out, this blurring of industries. And too often, companies that get digitally disrupted never saw them in the rearview mirror. And so if you're not in the digital space, and we've used this language several times over, that digital business is a journey. If you're not on the journey, there's no way you can catch up if you do see a digital disruptor coming into your mirror. So it's important to get on the journey. The sense of urgency is now. And matter of fact, sense of urgency, if you're not on the road already in a big way, you really need to try to catch up. In all three of these cases, and I would submit to you, to really become a digitally savvy business, complexity is the enemy. Because when you think about being fast, being agile, having dependency on fixed structures that are outside of your enterprise, having time latency is a form of complexity that will kill you. So complexity ultimately is the enemy of best. So if we look at some examples, I'm going to go through a couple examples of companies that are both digital disruptors or right brain, if you will, and some left brain companies. I think they're doing it well. And in most of these cases, not all, they've taken the and culture. They're approaching it in both ways. First is Mink, which is a cosmetic company that uses 3D printing. And that when you think about, they just launched in 2014, and what they do is they sell printer, well, maybe to Albert, but I don't know. I'm guessing that their target is probably more female. But they sell the digital printer for roughly $200, and they also gives a core set of substrates. So that person can make makeup any color to express how she wants to express herself. So any of those colors are possible. And what it really taps into is a totally different experience, that the consumer is setting the standard for what she wants to wear, how she wants to look, for what she considers beautiful. Mink is essentially outsourcing their new product innovation. And if you compare and contrast that towards, say, a large cosmetic company that also then wants to come out with the makeup of this certain color, A, they have to formulate it, B, they have to prototype it, then they have to manufacture it, then they have to ship it, they have to change the merchandising, they have to change the merchandising elements. All of that stuff takes time, money, and a business like this has a huge potential to digitally disrupt companies that have been long established. And when you think about it, at its core, it's tapping into this because it's a different kind of consumer experience. And I thought Brian did an exceptionally good job of summarizing in a simple way what consumers want. Help me do my job easier and better, or make me feel good. This does it for both. It allows makeup and customization to be easy, and it makes her feel good because she's expressing herself and her individuality. The second one, and it's almost like he read my slides, we work very closely with Under Armour. And I would submit to you that Under Armour has moved really from a company that's around performance apparel to really a health platform. With their acquisitions of MyFitnessPal, they have not only the insights of what 138 million consumers are doing, what activities they have, their dietary issues. They also have ideas and information around their aspirations, their goals. So when you think about this, there's a great intersection between these two. In terms of Under Armour makes, I'm not sure if you're not familiar with the MyFitnessPal, they make food recommendations. So if you're in the food industry, that is an incredibly desirable demographic when you look at who's using MyFitnessPal. Wouldn't you like to tap the mind, hearts, and stomachs of those individuals? Don't you think Under Armour is going to, at some point, be opening that up for consumer products companies. Yet another media channel, yet another channel to influence consumers. But you can see by going in this, they're going after something that reinforces their brand, but it opens them to new product categories and new sets of growth potential. And what's really important when we talk about the culture of and, if they didn't do MyFitnessPal, they were already growing very fast. They were already focused on profitability. So this is a great example of a company that has an and culture that's attacking both growth and efficiency and leveraging digital technology to do it. Another good example is Amazon, and specifically I'm thinking of the Dash, the Amazon Dash. When you think about the potential to make buying so convenient that you don't necessarily consider brand, you don't necessarily consider price. That convenience, once again, you're giving the consumer something they want. You're making their life easier. And so that has a great potential to be a digital disruptor that affects your direct marketing, that could affect your pricing, that could affect, really it ripples back through trade and the other fixed processes that are such a structure in our industry. How about efficiency? Let's take a look at a couple. Colgate has done, I think, an exceptional job of looking at integrated planning and business agility. Their whole commercial planning process in terms of being able to consider all aspects from procurement, supply, all the way through financial, manufacturing footprint, and distribution. They've applied digital technologies to greatly enhance how they plan and how they respond. ConAgra is presenting on the total margin management. And what's really, I think, pretty compelling, at least from my perspective, is that they said, from a company perspective, we have a focus to really improve margin management. I want everybody in my organization thinking about margin when they're making a decision. So, and then they took the technology to help build that out, and HANA gave them some unique capabilities to do that. So it's this align, you know how hard it is just within your teams to align everybody around a common mission and goal. They did a great job of taking a digital-based technology to really get people thinking, simulating, and understanding how my personal actions affect a company objective. And the last one you may be less familiar with, Harley-Davidson has done a phenomenal job leveraging Internet of Things. They've put sensors throughout their manufacturing facility in York, PA. And they did it for the purpose of, at first, cost reduction, but then they saw a different way to change the user experience. And they already have a legendary user experience, a lot of passion and loyalty in their customer base. They did this to allow a biking enthusiast to get a custom bike. Instead of it used to be 16 weeks, they got it to 6 hours. So if you go on their website and you have the cash and you can do the various components, 6 hours later, just drive over to York, pick up your bike. Totally different experience. And they really leveraged IoT in a very unique way. They've also historically been very open to plant tours and to collaboration. So if this is an area that you're interested, please let me know. So I think that we can assume that to get to this and, we can't continue to do what we have been doing. And this is where I was saying this is not an incremental change. We have to look across both business models, processes, and the work that we do and do it fundamentally differently. So I wanted to take each one of these, and Lori shared with you this morning about reimagining across those three axes. And some of these I think are more impactful than others. Certainly in the business model, and Mink is a great example, and I also want to make sure that tomorrow, Jerry Wolf from Favana, that's all about personalized food and the flavor print technology. Please make sure you go to that session. That is something I think you're going to see personalization to a level that is truly remarkable. And when you think about personalization, as soon as you wake up in the morning and you get into your car, most of the seats move, the radio stations are tuned, sometimes the steering wheel's moving. Everything in your life is personalized except the eating experience. On average, we only eat about 7 meals in your family. You rotate those 7 recipes constantly. this is a huge opportunity, especially for food companies in this room, to take personalization and create a new business model with it. The other thing that we're seeing is a pretty dramatic shift in terms of it's not necessarily what you do, but it's what you know and how you can build that around not only selling products, but selling products and services, selling products and services and subscriptions, and making these choices available to your consumers. And while it's probably a little bit less intuitive to say, let's apply that to Cheerios, a lot of these concepts may come to kind of your bread and butter packaged goods. They're going to come to a lot of products in the way of information, nutrition, personalized nutrition. So this whole world that we're moving towards, frankly, just imagine if there were no such thing as an SKU. How's your business planning going to handle that? How's all the systems and structures that we have in place going to handle if a defined SKU isn't necessarily an SKU as we think of it today? As we look at the reimagining of business processes, this is one thing that when you consider, and I'll leave the company out, but they did a study of all of the customer orders that they receive and how many of those did they touch at one point in time. And probably most of you in the room have done a similar study at one point in time. As a matter of fact, I think Procter & Gamble was considered world-class. They only touched 60% of their orders at some point. This one, also a very, very large company, 94% of their orders were touched by a human at some point. And this doesn't count the warehouse picking the product. This is touching the order. Think about if our financial markets, if Wall Street operated that way. Would we accept it? Today, algorithms control a lot of the buying and selling. We don't have people in the pits holding up cards and everything is done manually. Why in the world do we have to touch 94% of the orders? So when you think about it, the technology exists today that we can automate a lot of decisions. When Uli was showing the prioritized approach, that was shown to kind of show the power of that interface. Frankly, I think that most people, as they would do that, would have a lot of those decisions automated. And those are only exceptions that pass a certain threshold. So we really have to move more and more to leveraging algorithms, leveraging much more of automated decision making, because the data is coming at us, the variety is coming at us, and there's huge savings both on the efficiency as well as increasing our ability to respond if we eliminate a lot of the touch. The other thing that is dramatically changing things is the network-based business. And when you look at probably the lowest hanging fruit is the indirect materials, where companies like as large as Caterpillar, they don't touch an invoice. There's no three-way matching. You can apply that same to not only direct materials, but then you can go outside of that and say, how about contingent labor? How about if I need to go after some statisticians for a short period of time, or I need some marketers for a short period of time, or I need to get plant maintenance skills to ramp up. This network approach will allow you really to much more effectively get skills, get processes done. And the other thing that is really important, and I'm glad that Brian touched on, is how important trust is. When we think about the trust and the bond that we have with our consumers, it's everything. It's tied to your brand, it's tied to your profitability. Consumers are demanding more and more transparency. They want to understand where their products came from. They want to understand that the products that they got were made in a healthy, safe, and sustainable way. You consider the major hit that Volkswagen and Audi is taking for their lack of transparency and deceitfulness. It is absolutely a trend that is increasing, and it requires a major systems approach, not only to just simply comply with standards or a Food Modernization Act. It really is going to that next level of really providing transparency so that your consumers, if you're in the food industry, can live healthier and better lives, or if you're in the durables, that they have transparency all the way back to other accessories and other products that you don't own. The other factor that's huge here is that everything is local. So more and more we're getting into zip code segmentation. So I mentioned and touched on this a little bit more. You would be surprised, especially if you're outside the US, the degree to which contingent labor is increasing, especially in our industry, is pretty substantial. And it's more than we need to have additional delivery drivers around Christmas. And it's not just factory workers. It's contingent labor around scientists. It's contingent labor around, I mentioned mathematicians, and marketing is another big area. As we talked about the divide between generations, a millennial is much, much more fine with, let me work as a contract employee. It's more about the work that I'm doing and the people that I'm doing it for, rather than the stability of I need to be an employee of this company for my lifetime. That has very significant implications around your training, your ramp-up processes, and your ability to process work instructions and so forth. So we've talked a lot about the digital core, and my belief is when you look at S4, a couple things that it does really, really well, and by its very nature, it's different. If you look at it versus R3 or ECC, it's fundamentally different. And Uli hopefully kind of gave you an under-the-covers look. But the fact that you can do anything in real time, the fact that you can reduce and or eliminate a lot of these forecasting fences and planning fences, if you so choose, it gives you the ability to really go after growth and efficiency, to be able to go after consumer intimacy, but also have the ability to respond. It also allows you to sweat the assets, and let me explain that a little bit. There's some very flexible ways to deploy S4, especially if you're in a multi-instance perspective, that you can put S4 in one division. You don't have to do it all. You can do it in certain lines of business. You don't have to do it in all. So you can say, let me look at my investments of SAP that I already have or other technologies, and I'm going to sweat those assets. I'm not going to replace those. I'm going to focus the digital core on this part of the business, and I'm going to migrate over time. It's not an all or nothing decision. It's not a rip and replace decision. And ultimately, it ties insights to actions. So I also want to provide you an update beyond kind of the digital, where we're going and why this is important. An update on a handful of solutions, and I'm doing it in the context of our consumer products value map. And hopefully this is a map that you're very familiar with, and we try to keep it stable in terms of those 5 pillars are really the differentiators that separate companies and where they usually separate themselves in the marketplace. And then down at the bottom, those cross functions are those functions that are more similar across CPG companies. So because of time, I wanted to just give you a brief update in those 5 areas. Marketing management, and that's kind of all of the marketing categories. Trade, sales management in the perfect store, demand-driven planning, all the integrated business planning, and certainly, guys, there's a lot more detail next door, as well as demand and insights. So when we look at, and I should say from a branding perspective, all of our marketing assets are under the Hybris brand. So with our acquisition a couple years ago of Hybris, they really have a lot of talent in the marketing area. And what we've done is we've taken our SAP marketing folks, we've pulled them together, we've taken a fresh look at the architecture, we've taken a fresh look at the capabilities, and I think that we have something, especially in the consumer product space, that if you have any needs in this area, please talk to Marco Teresi is here, as well as, or get any of us. This is, I think, going to be there's some really revolutionary things in this stack. And we simplified what the architecture looks like, because at the end of the day, we're going after growth and efficiency. And it's hard to say efficiency when it comes to marketing. They typically have always been right-brained, right? You got to be efficient, and you've got to be real-time in terms of your marketing management. So I'm going to give a little bit more detail on what I mean by Hybris profile. The top level, all consumer experience that you would get from SAP. So anything that is consumer direct or e-commerce or anything that a consumer is consuming on a mobile device, that experience management will be going through the Hybris experience management. And content, very few, a lot of people don't realize that content management and syndication of content goes through Hybris as well. They have some phenomenally good content management, digital assets management, and syndication. And that's getting more and more important, whether you're in the food industry or you're in the luxury sector, to be able to syndicate your data, because retailers want it all at this point. And also there's a thing called microservices. This technology was built in a way that we can open up to partners to literally I just want to do content, or I just want to do loyalty management in fashion. And I'm going to do kind of a customized app that consumes. It can be done as a microservice, very light touch, very way to get a purpose-built app built quickly. So I mentioned Hybris Profile, and why I think this is revolutionary. This is kind of a description of what it does. But fundamentally what it does is it is a way in which you can build a profile of a consumer, or if it's a B2B, a customer, in a way that you can understand their context, so that you can do specialized promotions and offers to them in the context in which they are. And it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's constantly refining, constantly doing kind of a machine learning approach to constantly refining the profile. It's a very, very powerful concept. It's coming out in January of 2016. So you can certainly talk to Marco or anyone else on my team here. But this is something, if you have a need in this space, I would highly recommend that you look at the profile, because it's going to drive a lot of our future direction. I want to talk about trade, and boy, when we think about trade, it's funny when you mention the word trade. I see faces in the crowd, and there's a tightness that kind of gets over it. Like, it seems like we've constantly tried to approach this problem from different angles. We really think that when you look at the trade solution and the approach that we've had and continue to have, it really is meant to be this closed loop, all the way from corporate planning, all the way through perfect store execution. And we think one of the real differentiators is when you start to layer some of our new technology assets in this, we can get far more predictive. So our goal here is really to go beyond optimization. We want to go beyond doing just plain customer planning to allowing you to simulate actions, allowing you to be able to rapidly change. So there's no reason why trade plans have to be so fixed for such a long time, to give you the ability to alter plans based upon actual performance. We also really see moving from pushing stock and pushing merchandising into more of a retail execution. And that's going to come alive. I've got some details for you on the perfect store. And this process severely reduces complexity. When you look at the stack, both from the user experience through the architecture, this is make no mistake, trade is a complicated process today. This is a much simpler approach, a much simpler solution. So hopefully you've had a chance to see some of it in the exhibition area, but this is, I think, a fundamentally different approach. I also wanted to share with you our DSIEM, or Demand Signal Management solution. We've been refining and constantly improving the solution. We've added global market share integration of Nielsen and syndicated data. We also can provide this to you as a service. If you don't want to deal with the data cleansing, data harmonization, and building the reports and the analytics, we can do that for you and on a subscription basis. This also ties directly into the customer planning, which was in addition to the trade management solution. We also, and I probably jumped the gun because I don't think it's official yet, but we're coming out with a try before you buy, if you want to experience it. And then also we're expanding the partner ecosystem, because this is a platform that partners can build on, because when you look at this data houses all your POS data, social data, distributor data, as well as your market research data and syndicated data. You also can get, via your sensors, any of the weather information. So you can tie a number of things together in a framework that has a harmonization layer and helps make what is a cumbersome and complex process much, much easier, much more simple. The other one, I mentioned the perfect store, and you know, I pledged to you when we kicked off this session that we're going to be very transparent, and this is an area we've been on a journey, and I'm very, very happy where we're at now. It has not been a smooth road. It's been something that we've changed our architecture, we've changed our approach, we've changed our user experience. This has been some tough sledding, but I'm happy with where we ended up. The solution is mature and it's available. As we talk about retail execution, it's either on-prem or in a cloud in terms of our cloud for customer. We also, I would be remiss if I didn't promote, we have a breakfast session on something called PlanaCheck, where you can take a picture of your shelf, look at the facings, and do all of the work around planograms. We've also invested, and I'll tell you, this has been hard, frankly, because direct store delivery is a hard business process. And we've I think, done some remarkable things around offline pricing. It's available on Android in March of next year. It's on Windows mobile currently. And this is a full logistics and sales process in one. And so it's really dramatically new in terms of features and functions. And I can honestly say I think the hard work has paid off. And for any of those who have been along with us on this bumpy journey, thank you. And promise, I always caution that I'll never promise a smooth road on everything, but I appreciate the dedication that companies have had in this space. As we look at planning, I mentioned that in a no SKU world, the plans that you do are vastly different. Even if we don't get that far, if we get into much more customizable products, or matter of fact is the SKUs have absolutely blown up in the industry, and the profitability per SKU has gone down, it's fundamentally changed sales planning. And when you look at capacity planning, the sharing economy, there's a bunch of different factors that have fundamentally changed how people plan, the timeline that they plan for, a greater importance around response management, a much greater recognition finally in the industry around sales and operations planning. We have some companies that I think are doing exceptionally well. And as I mentioned earlier, a shift to much more algorithmic and automated decision-making with the ability to simulate decisions ahead of time. So the supply chain suite around this integrated planning notion is a core part of our ongoing strategy, and it's something that we're going to continue to invest in. So just to summarize, when we started this journey, we talked about the word best in terms of what does it take in terms of a consumer products company to be best in a consumer-driven digital enterprise. Growth and efficiency, right? In terms of driving outcomes and having that and culture. Simple and fast. And that's really the and culture. You have to be simple, you have to be fast. Complexity is your enemy. And finally, it's got to be real time. Think about all the time latency and lags that are existing. Think about when Brian showed the virtual reality going all the way to delivery. You can't, batch cannot, we should purge that word from our thinking, right? And that's only the really long ones. I mean, besides batch, just process it. We have to be able to be, if you're not real time, you're out of time. And I think I am just about out of time, and you'll be happy to know I'm out of slides. So once again, I do want to promote, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions, or if there's any questions here, be more than happy to take some questions. But please, it's a beautiful day. Let's go enjoy some libations out there, get to know one another, because community is everything about these sessions.